You're listening to the NeuroSpice Life podcast.
And this week, we're talking about why being scared of too much often stops us asking for what we're worth.
Yeah, I mean, like the label too much, ironically, is it's often just too much. And so it often comes from this whole, situation where people have viewed you as being like too much for them to hold, too much for them to handle. And over a period of time, I really felt like being called too much, whether it was by, you know, loved ones, whether it was by friends, whether it was by relationships. And I got to this point where I really got a complex about it. And I felt like I was maybe just being too much. Maybe I was asking for too much. Maybe it was just me. And so I think what actually happened was for a period of time, I did shrink myself. I was being told that, yeah, maybe, if I didn't ask for so much, maybe people might want to, be in a relationship with me. Thanks to the person who said that. And
if only I was better.
Yeah, if only you were different, if only you were not you. And so what it actually ended up translating to is because I wasn't feeling comfortable to be able to ask for my needs, it showed up in all these ways where I couldn't ask for my worth in jobs. So if I knew that I had been working really, really hard and, maybe that wasn't being recognized, I found it quite difficult to advocate for myself in a way that was like, well, review time's coming up. Hey, I've been doing all this extra work and taking on all of this extra responsibility. Maybe that could be reflected in an increase in salary. And so, and to have external voices say, oh, well, you don't want to ask for too much because they might let you go. And then to have the internal, so the people I was working with say, well, actually, you haven't demonstrated that by, recording what you've done every single day. True story. And so it was a thing.
Over time, absolutely.
Maybe I'm not worth this.
And a lot of my clients that I support with struggle with this as well, right? And it comes down to us as well, almost like you should feel lucky, right? Like you're lucky to have a job, you're lucky to be in a relationship, all of that, the internal narrative or externalized, where it's like this, oh, I should be grateful for what I'm got, even though there's a disconnect between what you're getting and what you truly need or what you're truly worth.
And what you're worth, yeah.
Yeah.
And look, rejection sensitivity dysphoria it's a real thing. Like we talked about it in the sensitive episode. And when you kind of really look at what's under the surface, the monsters under the bed, rejection sensitivity dysphoria is this awful feeling. It's like, something's crawling up under, my skin, up my back, because it's this overwhelming feeling, both emotional and psychological responses to what I perceive could being the operative word, could being rejection or disappointment or, in some cases, disapproval. And it's really like, for the people that I speak to, it's really apparent in people who have got like ADHD or attachment trauma or CPTSD or, just a really dysregulated like nervous system. So when you actually kind of go, well, why is this? And you break it down, okay, it's wonderful to know, okay, well, it's like my interior, cortex is triggering an alarm. There's alarm signals happening and there's distress and, it lights up when we feel like we're being socially excluded. And so it's this overwhelming, faster, stronger, harder experience to regulate our nervous system, because our brain has essentially learned that relationships are unpredictable. There are, in some cases they've been unsafe or they've been conditional. Yeah.
And so your brain kind of then, it sounds like it sort of like fills the gaps in to go, the outcome is I'm going to be rejected. Therefore, I'm not going to ask. I'm going to do the safe thing. I'm going to shrink. I'm going to make myself smaller. I'm going to try and anticipate what the other person wants or needs and to try and be that at all times. But the cost to that, I guess, is to yourself.
Yeah. We talk about self-abandonment a lot. And so in those moments where that, like, in your chest, you've got this need and you're trying to communicate this to somebody else who, for some reason, doesn't want to hear it, can't hear it, won't hear it. And it's crushing to kind of go, well, okay, I'm just going to put this need back in my box again, and I'm not going to take it out because I know it's not going to be heard. I know it's not going to be listened to.
Yeah.
And it really just makes you feel quite unseen and unworthy. And so I think in one of the other episodes too, we talked about something else called limerence, which is, what it feels like to be completely hyper-focused and hyper-fixated on, the person, it sounds awful, the person doesn't necessarily always matter in the limerence thing. It's this overwhelming desire to have the other person return the same feelings towards you as you have towards them. And so it can become all encompassing, or, it becomes the sole point of focus to get this person to return the same feelings. And often that means conforming, changing, but it comes off as really inauthentic. And ironically, inauthenticity, when it's presented in such a way, is too much. Yeah. And so you're being rejected for being you, but you're also being rejected for not being you. and you just go, well, where do I sit in all of this? And how do I hold myself in this space to just be me, and to ask and to be okay with no? In our difficult episode, we talked about microdosing no. So, what it feels like, that taking back that empowerment to say no to somebody when, you maybe haven't had the strongest boundaries in the past. But the other side of the coin is, how can you accept no without feeling like your whole inner world is collapsing and no one understands you, no one can see you, and no one hears you, because that's been your experience.
And so how do you?
I mean, look, it's hard, right? It's uncomfortable. And I've always said that to get to the other side of uncomfortability, you cannot go around it. You can't go under it. You can't go over it. You have to go through it. Yeah. And it sucks. It really does suck. It's not going to sugarcoat it, because it's hard. But if you start with something small, we've talked about, how do you define your needs? What are your needs in certain situations? Because you get to that point where you might not necessarily know what your needs are, because you haven't been able to vocalize them for such a long time. So I think there's two ways to kind of go through it. The first one is to realize that, no one's coming to save you in this regard other than yourself, right? So no one's coming to save you. Being a damsel doesn't work. Trust me, been there, tried that. You kind of have to be, in a fairy tale, you are, you could be the princess, you can be the prince, you can be the witch too. And they're all amazing characters, but you are all these people, and you kind of have to save yourself in this moment, because that's one part of it. So no one's coming to save you. So you create your own needs, you fulfill your own needs, you fulfill your own wants. You don't rely on other people to always have to do that for you. And when you find someone who is interested in listening to you and fulfilling those needs, then, that can be the start of a beautiful thing. The other side of that, which I love, is if no one's coming to save you, well, then no one's coming to stop you either.
I love that.
So if we're putting all these boundaries on ourselves, I can't do that, I can't do this, why not? Yeah. Because if the worst that somebody else can tell you is no, then go out and find someone who's going to tell you yes. Yeah. Be the person who says yes to yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, I guess it comes back to that thing in your brain, right? Of what you imagine is going to happen. 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't. It doesn't, and our brains trick us up. And so rather than imagining that you're going to get the no and letting that stop you, it's like, just ask and deal with the answer.
Yeah, completely. And I think as well is that once you start accepting no, but then also not accepting that as like, that's the end of the road, that's the final full stop, that's the only answer you're going to get. Once you start searching for more, like, to get a little woo-woo, that's what the universe will start to give you. If you're not accepting those things anymore, you're changing what you are choosing to accept, then all of a sudden all these other doors start to open, and you realize that you've actually been accepting too little for too long. And that's how you can also start to come out of it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And that idea that it's almost like it's a no for now, or it's a no from that person, but it doesn't mean every
It's not a no
situation is
from
going to be a
everyone.
no.
Yeah.
So it's like ask, deal with it, get the response. But whatever that response is, that's just one person's response. It's one person's opinion. It's a different data point.
Yeah.
So like in
Yeah.
your job, if you ask for a raise and they don't give it to you, well,
Then that tells
there
you how
might
much
be other
they think
jobs
of you.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other funny side too is, because I'm 6 foot and I'm not a small person, it's also, there's the other side of it for me and for any of our listeners who might also have similar kind of issues, what it feels like to try and fit into a world that was also not built for you, for your brain, but also not fit into a world that was not physically built for you. So airline seats, legroom, hotel rooms, baths, all that sort of stuff. I think there's a number of sort of different ways and situations where, for larger people, for tall people in particular, I've got a very tall family. I've got very tall cousins, husband and stepson. We're all very tall, and so we all have this problem where we're trying to literally shrink and conform ourselves into clothing or into amenities,
Contorting yourselves like pretzels.
and again, still not that flexible.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one to call out too, because it's not just our brains, it's our bodies. Like we're not always going to be a perfect fit for the environment around us. And so can you change that environment, or do you need to find a different environment?
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. So what would you say to somebody that was coming to you and saying, I'm scared that I'll be called too much? How would you?
Honestly, let them. Let them call you too much, because the other person is literally just showing you the boundaries of what they're willing to accept about you. And if it's not that they're willing to accept the whole you, and it's not the phrase, if you can't accept me at my worst, you don't accept me at my best, because I think that that's sometimes a bit of a thing that people use in order to behave badly. But it is very much a case of understanding that not everyone is going to be right for you, and not everyone has to like you. That was probably one of the hardest lessons that I sort of came up with. I wanted everyone to like me because I had spent so much of my childhood being bullied or, being rejected. And so it was this thing that, I needed to be liked. And once I got over that, because I realized, well, I didn't like everybody. That's okay. Everybody can have their personal preference. But again, it really just, like in the weird episode, if someone's calling you weird, they're really just showing the edges of their bubble. And it's like, well, that's fine. But, my weird is, your weird is my Tuesday, or something like that. It's just a way for somebody to tell you that maybe they're just not your people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there won't be other people for you out there.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean there won't be a few things down the road.
Definitely.
I love that. So that probably sums us up pretty well for why we are often afraid to ask for what we're worth, because we are afraid of being called too much. And if you like what you've heard today, then like and subscribe for future episodes. And until then, I guess, stay spicy.
Stay spicy, everyone.
You're listening to the NeuroSpice Life podcast
with Hanna and Freya, besties, brains, and more.
If you've enjoyed listening, follow us on YouTube or your favourite podcast app and share it with someone else who knows the sting of a sticky label.
We'll see you next time. Until then, stay spicy, stay wonderful.